I'm going to be talking about rhetorical listening. Rhetorical listening is the stance of openness that a person may choose to assume in relation to a person, text, or culture. An example of this often occurs when people pause unconsciously to eavesdrop. This promotes understanding of oneself and others, while also proceeding with caution with accountability to their logic so they don't place blame or guilt on anyone. Rhetorical listening then leads to worldview. Worldview is a shared way of reasoning within a group. It affects how claims are made, such as Trump sucks. People have different opinions, so that leads to different worldviews. It can also affect two completely different competing worldviews, such as All Lives Matter versus the Black Lives Matter movement. There's different logics, so people have different worldviews on the topic. But it's okay to have different worldviews. That's why rhetorical listening is so important in today's world. If everyone participated in rhetorical listening, the world wouldn't have so much hate. We'd understand why people think what they think, and it automatically helps you grow in your own opinion as a person. When you do rhetorical listening, worldviews can change over time. So when you're younger, your worldview may change from when you're younger to older, and it can also change from place to place. These intersections of worldviews, such as gender, race, age, politics, can become messy, and they create our own unique identities. Going back to the topic of rhetorical listening, when you do it, position yourself as an outsider. Listen to what people are saying without having the need to comment back at them. Intend to understand them and not persuade them into something they don't believe. And finally, consider and find why their worldview makes them who they are as a person. When looking at Project 2, you were supposed to look at a topic you didn't necessarily agree with. You couldn't state your own opinion, you just had to simply take all the information in and analyze it. For Project 2, the topic that I chose to do was the pro-life stance. I didn't agree with it, so I decided to look into it more. By just listening and not responding with my own opinions in the essay, I learned so much more about what people thought about the pro-life stance, and even though I still may not agree with it, I feel way more well-rounded within the topic than I did before. For example, because of rhetorical listening in Project 2, I learned that pro-life doesn't necessarily mean anti-abortion. Anti-abortion is simply not wanting to have a kid, while pro-life is protecting the mother and child's health. Pro-life movements work to level the playing field among race, religion, gender, age, so people have the same level feeling of being human as everyone else. And finally, pro-life means pro-people, so how can Republicans be anti-immigration? It just simply doesn't make sense. Without Project 2 promoting rhetorical listening, I wouldn't have learned so much about the topic that I disagreed with. Another example of rhetorical listening we did in class was listening to a TED Talk by Zachary Wood. He talked about why it's worth listening to people you disagree with. In the TED Talk, Zachary talks about how his life, he experienced a lot of racial stereotyping and the discomfort that came along with the stereotyping. To prepare himself for the controversy in the real world, he joined a group that brought in controversial speakers to talk about topics that the people that in the group didn't necessarily agree with. Zachary had a lot of trouble with his administration agreeing with him. They kept canceling his speakers, but he goes on to tell his staff, just because you don't agree with a topic doesn't mean a million other people don't. Millions of people agree with what these speakers are talking about. And finally, the administration agreed with that. Like, I'm not the only one that doesn't think that way. Listening to people you disagree with gives everyone a common ground. You get why they disagree with a certain topic. Through engaging with listening and not commenting, we reach a better understanding of our own beliefs, and this leads to the ability of us solving our own problems. So many of our skills and our skill set wouldn't be there if people can't talk to each other about their own opinions and how people couldn't be good listeners. In conclusion, rhetorical listening is a key factor in everyone's life, or at least it should be, and hopefully is after this speech. To face adversity in the world, we need to have an understanding of each other, and don't have to have the need to comment back at them. To grow in our own opinions, we have to learn why we agree with our opinions, and rhetorical listening simply does that because it lets us hear the other side.